one day I decided that I was going to rollerblade to work. I only lived about a half a mile away from work, though I'd never done it before. So I was smart, and I thought to myself, okay, well, when I get there, I'm going to need different shoes. So I put my backpack on, I borrowed my roommate's rollerblades, and let me back up for just a minute. Michelle McCullough is a sedentary lass. My idea of an Olympic sport is from the couch to the kitchen. So I don't know what impressed me that day to go on some sort of aerobic journey right before work, no less, in overalls. I really wish they'd come back, by the way. We'll save that for another day, too. So I decide I'm going to rollerblade. I've got my business shoes in the back in my backpack, and I set off. Now, I quickly realized that this is not going to work very well. My experience with rollerblades to this point were minimal, and I didn't know how to use those little stoppy things on the back. If there's an official term, I don't know, because I just roll onto the grass and call that braking. Okay, so this is fine, though. That's worked for me in the previous twice I'd ever rollerbladed, so I wasn't fearful. But one thing that I figured out really quickly on rollerblades that I didn't ever realize in a vehicle is that the back of Ancestors Square, as you come around the front, as I was approaching from the back, of course, is there's an ever so slight decline. Ever so slight, but enough. Now, just like aerobics was not my number one favorite subject, neither was physics, but I bet some of you smarty pants out there know exactly what started to happen. I'm in a business area now, so there's no grass. I still don't know how to use those little stoppy things on the back, even in emergency circumstances. And by the way, if at any point you feel like you need to laugh, instead of just give me an embarrassed look, that's okay. That's the whole point of telling you a story like this. I'm picking up speed, and I'm rounding the corner, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And all of a sudden, almost sent from heaven, I see one of these. Now, this is not the actual picture, but there is one of these. I think it's still there on Ancestor Square. It's historic now. And I think to myself, it's all right. I'm just going to tap up against that, and I'll stop, and everything will be lovely. Well, my tap was a slam, and I fell straight backwards onto my back, knocked the wind out of me and a whole bunch of my humility, and then I just laid there. Who just saw me? And I can barely breathe, but I decide that I'm going to be fine. I quickly take off the rollerblades. I'm close enough to work now. We can just walk the rest of the way. And I dust off my overalls. They were khaki, in case you were wondering. And I go and trot off into the office. Now, I don't know if these kinds of things happen to you, but they happen to me on a regular basis. My husband often, frequently, calls me the girl that's a hazard to herself. And so I know that and consider that to be my main theme song, and I can sing it on any given occasion. But on this particular occasion, I got not only a little bit of an understanding of physics, I got a huge dose of reality. Now, in life, you're going to have some of these experiences, right? You're gaining speed, you're gaining momentum, life is working grandly, even if you don't realize that you're going a little too quickly. And then something that will happen will stop you. It'll knock you flat on your back. And then you have a choice to make. Are you going to stay there, or are you going to get up? I always envision this when I was hiking with my dad, which as a kid I hated because remember, I didn't like physical activity back then. He would take us on these hikes in Sun Valley, and when we got to the top, he'd make us raise our hands way high in a big Y, like, ah, and we would yell out over the mountain in the field, and how great that felt. And so I have loved the feeling of peak performance that comes not just from hiking, but comes from achieving our highest potential. Because we have the opportunity to either stay down in the ground in the valley where it's safe, or we can climb that hill, tackle some of those challenges, and appreciate the rewards that come from hard work. So those 5 decisions are here. We're going to go through each one of them, but I call them the 5 Ps of peak performance, also known as the 5 decisions that determine your future success and happiness. The first one is to pledge. The second is possibility. The third is power. The fourth is planning for pitfalls. And the 5th is positivity. And then we make another goal and we do it a little bit bigger. And I love big, hairy, audacious goals, but if you note that initially your brain is like, you could never do that. Do you know how many New Year's resolutions you gave up on 2 weeks in? And so you have to recommit to yourself and help your body and your brain know that you are ready to grow. It is so important to have the dream, but it's more important to take the action. Success equals the vision plus the action. You can vision all you want, but until you do, it's just a dream. And so what you have to do in order to make that work for yourself is you have to look at your goals and then break them down and say, what are those daily, weekly, and monthly activities that we have to do to make those dreams a reality? What do I have to do every single day? Because here's the thing about success. It's not a thing you check off your to-do list. It's a pattern. It's something that you do on a regular basis that helps you. Oprah wasn't successful once. She took that blueprint that she could figure out for herself and then applied it to a network, applied it to a magazine, applied it to a television show, applies it to all kinds of products and services, applies it to movies. She takes the same principle. So wherever you go, whenever you decide to switch boats, it doesn't matter because you can figure out that formula for success for yourself. This framework was put together by a man named George Doran back in the 80s, and I like the framework, but I think George Doran is missing one thing. He's missing the why. And I'd love for you to switch in your head from SMART goals to SMART-E goals. I want you to root yourself in why that's important to you. If there's a specific college you want to go to, why is that college important? If there's a specific thing you want to accomplish in your life, why is that important to you? And this isn't me judging it because I want you to go after your dreams. I want you to have big, hairy, audacious goals. I want you to challenge and push the system, but I just want you to be rooted in your why. Because those times will happen when you run flat into a telephone booth and get knocked back down, and you have to remember why you wanted it so that you're willing to get back up. Regret feels worse than loss. That the opportunities that I fell flat on my face taught me something and made me stronger. But the times where I didn't jump, I didn't leap, that I didn't take that opportunity felt worse because what if lasts a lot longer than heartbreak. So right now, I want you to promise that you're going to just say no to 3 things. I want you to just say no to blame, just say no to excuses, and just say no to worry. I believe that success is a practice, not a destination. But the reality is that whether you consider success to be lots of money in the bank, or I consider success to be happiness, being a stay-at-home mom, it doesn't matter what that end result or destination is. What ultimately matters is what you're doing every single day to make that a reality. That time where I went careening into the telephone booth didn't stop me from still continuing to exercise. And even though that I'm a sedentary lass, I'm a recovering sedentary lass. And I've run a half marathon, and I exercise all the time, even though it's not my favorite thing, and for some people it is, and some people it isn't. But every time something happens to me, like for example, the time that I was training for a half marathon and I sprayed myself with mace, and there's mace in your face and you're going, this is a sign. I should not be running ever again. But then you decide, listen, that's just a test. I like to talk about the failures and the opportunities that we have to learn as trials of our fate. Not necessarily our faith, but our fate. Do we like it enough to pick ourselves up and try again? Do we like it enough to push past the point that other people don't push past because they get scared and worried and they say, oh, I can't do it? Or are we willing to say, listen, that taught me something. I'm going to keep the lock on my mace and run again next week. Or I'm going to learn how to use those stoppy things and then I can rollerblade to work again. Whatever that is for you, I hope that you don't see those opportunities as something that says you can't do it, because it's just a test to say, are you willing to try again? I love this quote down here by Pastor Stephen Furtick. It says, one of the reasons why we struggle with insecurity is because we compare our behind the scenes to other people's highlight reel. This quote was written, believe it or not, before Facebook. But it's so much more true today than before. We have to honor our path and where we are. And I remember sitting there thinking, why can't I have what she has? She has 5 kids and 4 businesses. Why can't I do this with my 2 and my 3 just a few years ago? And I realized I was comparing her end to my middle. And I was comparing only what I saw online to what may or may not be a reality. I was 7, but I remember as if it happened yesterday. I was playing in my room undetected, and it was well past my bedtime, but I was not about to go tell people, why don't you come put me to bed, Mom and Dad? So I just played in there quietly for a while. After a while, my mom came in, and instead of putting me to bed, she handed me a plastic bag and said, pack anything you can, we're leaving and I don't know when we're coming back. Now I was 7, I didn't quite understand what was going on, but I remember packing my underwear and some clothes and some 7-year-old treasures, like my Little Ponies and all the money to my name, which was probably about 50 cents. but just enough to hold the bag down to feel like it was substantial. And then we drove off and left my dad on the stairs crying. My parents, as you can imagine, ultimately divorced. But in that instant, being a 7-year-old, I didn't turn to my mother and say, could I have a different bag? After all, my grandfather was a travel agent, and we had Pan Am overnight bags in abundance in our house. But in the midst of my own mother's trial, she was just thinking, get it done. Now imagine if you and I were to sit down one-on-one. You probably have a great story, and my guess is it even trumps mine. The things that are going on in the walls of your own home and in the walls of your school and in your neighborhoods around you are nothing but tragic, and I know that. But if you get nothing else from today, I want you to know that your success lies in not living among that, but rising above it. And that you ultimately decide. This is what I call the plastic bag principle, right? We're all dealt our own little bag, and it may not be exactly what we want. Maybe we wish we had better clothes like that girl over there, or better parents like that girl over there, or better teachers like that girl right there. And all of those things would be better if, right? So my quest for you is to take your bag, embrace it, and enjoy it. I love this quote by Sam Bracken that says, pack your bag with hopes and dreams instead of fear and insecurity. So you have that choice too, that if you're going to put in that bag your future, or if you're going to carry around your past.